Okay, this is going to be a tutorial and a lesson in how to make a web page. What I'm going to do first is that I'm going to actually just begin making a web page, and you probably will not understand a lot of what I'm doing, but don't worry. This is just the first part of many parts. I'm going to make the web page, I'm going to explain a little bit about what I'm doing, but then after I'm finished, I'm going to come back and I'm going to give you a lecture and then explain each step part by part. And then after I'm finished, I'll make another web page, and hopefully you'll understand it a lot better by then. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a folder. This folder I will give any name. I can call it My Page, for example. There are certain rules about naming files and folders in websites. I'll explain those later, but notice that I'm not putting any spaces here, and I'm keeping the letters lowercase. Those are a couple of the rules. Okay, now when I make a folder like this, really what I've done is that I have made a website. That's what this is. A web site is really nothing more than a folder on a computer somewhere. And a web page is simply a text file which is in that folder. Now, you can make the web page using any text editing program, but I like to use one called Comodo Edit. Comodo Edit, I think, is one of the best programs for making web pages, and it's available on both the Macintosh and the PC. So, I'm going to start making my web page, and I'm going to begin by doing something called declaring the doc type, and the document type is HTML. This helps to establish with the computer that this is a web page. The next command I'm going to make is something called HTML, and that very simply says I'm a web page. Now I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to tab. This is something you'll see me doing a lot. Whenever I have commands which are inside other commands, I will indent. It's a way of showing that this next command is inside another command. Now a web page has two parts. There's the head and the body. So I'm going to make the head first. The head has information about the web page. For example, it has the title of the web page. So this title might be something like My Web Page. Now I'm going to hit enter and go back one, and I'm going to end the title. Notice that when I end a command, it begins with a slash. So here's the beginning, and here's the end. And so you have the title inside those two commands. So that's one thing that you should remember. Whenever you have a beginning and an ending command, whatever comes in between those two things, the beginning and the ending, that's affected by that command. All right, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to end the head. There are other things that you could put in the head, but the title is the main thing. Now I'm going to make what's called the body. The body is the other part of the web page. So an HTML document or a web page has a head and it has a body. Now what's in the body is the content of the page. So I'm going to fill that in just a minute. So let me just go back and end the body at the end, and then I'm going to end HTML also at the end. Go down here so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so now you can see that I have actually got an HTML document here. You'll notice that I begin the HTML at the beginning, I finish the HTML at the end. I have the head and the body. The head has a beginning and an ending. Inside the head is the title, and inside the title is what the title is, my web page. Now for the actual body. I'm just going to begin by putting in some text. I'm going to say here is some text. And I'm going to hit enter, and I'm just going to put in another line. Now this is another line as we look at it. But one thing that you'll notice when we actually take a look at the web page later is that these two lines of text, the one that says here is some text and this is another line, these will both appear on the same line, because when you're editing HTML, hitting the enter key does not do anything on the actual web page. If I want another line to be made, I have to do something like put in a command called br, or break for line break, and then this next text will appear on a new line. But only because I put a BR in there. All right, let me put something else in there. I'm going to go into the body command, and I'm going to add something. This is what we call an attribute. An attribute is an addition to a command or a tag, and it modifies that tag. It adds to it. It gives more information about the style of the web page. So I'm going to put in something for background color, and I'm going to make my background color light blue. Notice that light blue is spelled as one word, no spaces, and all lowercase. All right, so this actually is a complete web page right there. So I'm going to now save my web page. Now, when I save it, I'm going to go to the desktop, and I'm going to go into my folder. I'm going to go into the folder that I made before. Remember, I made a folder called My Page. So I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to give this page a name. I'm going to call this index. Now notice that originally the name given has a file name extension, txt. Now I'm going to keep that for right now because I want to show you something. But keep in mind that txt is not the correct file name extension for a web page. That's the file name extension for a text file. But the point I want to make is that web pages and text files are actually the same thing. The only thing different is that a web page has a different file name extension. So I'm going to save it in there, and I'm going to go back to my desktop, and here it is. This is the My Page folder. Notice that I now have index.txt, and I'm going to open this in my browser. So I have the Safari browser open somewhere around here. Where did I put it? There it is. Now notice when I open this page in the browser, it only appears as text. We see the tags, we see the HTML, but it doesn't appear as a web page. Well, that's because I saved it as .txt. Actually, if I double-clicked the file, it would just open up in a text editing program. But if I open it up in a browser like Safari, then it actually does not open as a web page. It just opens as a text file. So now I'm going to change that. I'm going to take the name of this file and I'm going to change it from .txt to .html. Notice that the icon changed. It's now a Safari icon. Now if I double click it, it will open up as a web page. And now you can see we actually have the title of the web page, My Web Page, appears. We have the text appearing on two lines. Here is some text. This is another line. And then after I put in the line break, it says this next text will appear on a new line. You see that we have the light blue background. It's all as I did it in the text editing program. So that's an important difference. If you save a file as txt, then it will not appear as a web page. But if you change the file name extension to .html, then it will appear as a web page. This and this are exactly the same file. The only difference is that I changed the file name extension. That's the only thing that I did differently. Okay, so now I'm going to go back, oops, excuse me, I'm going to get rid of that. Nope. And I'm going to open this up again. Now notice that since I've saved this as a file name extension .html, this program, Komodo Edit, actually recognizes that this is a web page. So it's taken the HTML commands and it's made them blue so that I can see where my commands are and where other things are. Notice that when I've got body BG color equals light blue, these are slightly different colors, but this now is recognized as a web page by this program. So it tells me, okay, these blue parts, these are HTML tags. Now one thing I can do is that I can add tags. For example, for this next text will appear on a new line, I might want to make that bigger. So I'm going to add a command, and notice, by the way, that now this program is helping me to type these commands. So I've got the command big. Notice I've got a beginning and an ending. Going to indent that to show that it's inside the big command. So what I just did with this big command is that I made the text bigger. So if I save this, go back to my browser, and then I reload, notice that this text got bigger right here. I can do other things as well. For example, I can add what's called CSS styling. So I'm going to add some CSS styling, and I'm going to say color is red. So that should make that this text, which is inside the big tag, it should make it red. So I'm going to save it, go back here, and when I reload, voila, there we go, the text is red. So you can see that as I change the file here in my text editor and I save it, I can see the changes appear in my browser. So that is a very basic introduction to how to make a web page. Now, of course, you probably don't understand a lot of the things that I did, but again, that's not a problem. We're going to go over this again. But for now, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to erase what I just did. Let's see, there we go. So that we can start over again new. But what I'm going to do is that I am going to give you a little bit of a more detailed introduction to how to make a web page. So, making a web page. Now, the first question is, what is a web page? And the answer is that a web page is a text file in a folder. We saw this. I showed you that I made a folder, I created a text file, and I did change it a little bit. I changed the file name extension. That's why it's important to have your file name extensions visible on your computer. When I changed the file name extension of the text file from TXT to HTML, it became a web page. But really, it's still just a text file. Now, it's different from a regular text file because it uses something called markup language. If you recall, those commands that I used inside the angled brackets, the ones that turn blue later on, that is markup language. As a matter of fact, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, HTML. This markup language is basically a set of commands which tell the browser how to style and structure the web page in the browser window. Now, a web page includes other files by referring to them, links, images, background images, and I'll show that to you later. But an important point is that pictures and other files are not saved in the web page. They're saved as separate files, and they're linked to or referred to by the web page. Now, what programs do you need? Well, you need a text editing program. You can use Notepad, which comes with almost any Windows computer. On the Macintosh, I recommend a program called Phrase. You have to download it from the internet. But these programs are very simple. They're very, very basic text editing programs. Better is something called a markup editor, something like Notepad++ or Komodo Edit. I love Komodo Edit. It's a very nice program. It's very simple, but it gives you a great deal of help. Not only does it show you your HTML commands as a different color automatically, but it also will help you to build your commands and attributes by suggesting which ones are possible. You saw that happen a little bit before. I'll show that to you again a little bit later. Now, you're also going to need browsers to view your web pages. Now, you probably already have one or two browsers, but really, you should try to get them all. And if you have both a Mac and a Windows computer, you should get all the browsers on both computers, because that will allow you to test the web page in several different browsers, because each browser shows web pages a little bit differently from the others. All right, what are the steps to making a web page? Well, as you saw, I first created a folder. Now, this folder will actually act as your website, and that's really what a website is. A website is simply a folder. Then you're going to place images in the folder as you need to. Notice that I did not put any files in the folder before I created my web page, but if I wanted to, I could place some images in there, and then I could use those images in the page. You'll see me do that a little bit later. Next, you want to open up your editor, make a new web page, and then save it. That's what I did. So I opened up Komodo Edit, I created a new page, and then I saved it. Again, when you're saving the file, make sure that you make the file name extension .html, not txt. Some programs you use to make web pages will do this automatically, but some text editors, you have to do this yourself. So, HTML basics. The commands, or tags, as they're more commonly called, have angled brackets around them. Anything inside these angled brackets is an HTML command. That's what you saw colored blue in Komodo Edit. Anything inside the brackets will not appear as text on the web page, even if it's not a real command. Even if you just put nonsense inside angled brackets, it will not appear on the web page. However, everything outside of angled brackets will appear as text on the web page. A few more points. Tags usually have a beginning and an end tag. For example, you'll have a regular tag at the beginning, and then you'll have an ending tag at the end. As you recall, when you saw me make the page, the ending tag begins with a slash before the actual command. The text which is in between the tags is changed by the tags. So if this tag was to make the text red, for example, then only the text between the two tags would become red. Now all the text in between the beginning and ending tags are styled by them, like I just said. Ending tags begin with a slash, again, just like I said. However, a few tags have no end because they do not style text or anything else between them. Remember when I was making my page, I used a command called BR, a break or a line break. You might recall I did not make an ending tag for the BR. I made an ending tag for HTML, for head, for title, and for body. I also made an ending tag for the big command, but I did not make an ending tag for BR. The BR tag does not have an ending command. Why? Because the BR is simply a break. It simply goes to a new line. It does not surround text in any way. It does not change text in any way. It simply does something in one place. Therefore, it does not have an ending tag. There are several tags that you will learn that do not have ending tags. Okay, so let's try out some of the things that I've just pointed out in the slideshow. Now remember, I told you that a web page is a text file in a folder. So again, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to give that folder a name. This time, let's make it Ponta. Ponta is the name of my dog. You'll probably hear me talk about Ponta a lot. I'm going to open up the Ponta folder. Now this is actually my website. Now, as I also told you before, what you can do is that you can put files, such as images, in that folder as a way to prepare. So that's what I've just done. I've put in several images. Some of them are background images, and some of them are pictures of Ponta, and I've put them in the folder. Now this is an important point. When you're making a website, all of the images should be in a very specific place. Now, when you become more advanced, you'll be able to create special folders to put these pictures in. But for this class, I'd like to ask you, at least at the beginning, just put your pictures in with your web pages. So if the web page is in the same place as the images, it's very easy to make them appear in your web page. All right, so let's create a web page. Again, I'm going to go to my program called Komodo Edit. I'm going to create a new file. And this time, I'm actually going to save it in advance. I'm going to save it right now before I do anything else. Now remember you should save it in the same folder where you put all your other files. So that's my Ponta folder. I'm going to go in there. I can see my images are in there. And I'm going to give it a name. Now, before, I saved my page first as .txt, but that was just to show you that if it's called .txt, it will not work as a web page. So whenever you save a web page, it should have the file name extension .html. So I'm going to call this one index.html. Something else that you'll find out very soon is that whenever you save the main page of a website, the top page or the home page of a website, it should be called index.html. Other pages can be given almost any other name that you like, so long as they follow certain rules about how you type the name. But the first page should always be called index. Okay, so I'm going to call it index.html. I'm going to save it in the Ponta folder, and now it's a web page. If I take a look at the folder, I can actually see the index.html file is now in my folder. It's got a browser icon, so I know that it's working fine. All right, now these web pages are different from just regular text files also because they have something called markup language. As you recall, I made, let's see, a doc type. Let's see, make the doc type right there, HTML. Notice I'm getting a little bit of help from my program. And now I'm going to make the HTML command. Notice that my program is helping me out. It's actually creating not just a beginning command, but also an ending command automatically. So we have the beginning command, which is just the tag with the inside the angled brackets, and then the end tag has the slash at the beginning of it. All right, inside that I'm going to create my head. There we go. And when I finish that, I'll get the end of the head as well. And inside that, I'm going to make my title. There we go. Let me just drag and drop the title over here. And then here is my actual title, and I'll call this the Ponta page. All right. And then I'm going to have, whoops, my body. Let's get that. And let me move the end of the body to the end of the file. And then after that, I can have my content. Okay, so this is what a web page looks like. What I've just typed here is called markup language. Now, you'll notice that the Ponta page right here, this is not inside any angled brackets. Therefore, it will appear somewhere on the page. In this case, it'll appear in the tab or the title bar. But everything else I've written, including the doc type, which I know it doesn't appear blue, but that's inside angled brackets, everything else is inside the angled brackets. And so that is all markup language. Remember, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. All right. Now, you can also include other files like images by referring to them. As you may recall, I put several images inside the same folder. One of them is called, let's use Pontafuji, pontafuji.jpg. Now, it's important that I know the file name extension because I have to use not just Pontafuji, but I also have to use .jpg in order to refer to the file. Notice that Pontafuji and index are both in the same folder. That'll make it easy for me to put that image in my file. Now, if I just save my page right now and I look at it in my browser, it's blank. You can see the title, the Ponta page, right there, but nothing appears in it, and that's because I actually did not put anything in the body. The body is blank. So let's change that. Let's put in an image command. And let's give it the source. Don't worry about the language here. I'll explain this later. And I'm going to put pontafuji.jpg, just like that. It's very simple. I'll be doing more complex things later on. But now when I save this and we look at it in the browser, now you'll notice that the photograph of Ponta appears in the web page. So keep in mind, I did not put the image Ponte Fuji into the index file. They are two separate files. Ponte Fuji is here, index is here. But when I was typing the markup language, I put in a reference. In other words, I referred to the image. So when this page displayed in the browser, it actually went and got the image from a separate file and then put it in the web page. But it's not located in the actual web page file. We also talked about the programs that you'll need. As you can see, I'm using two programs here. I'm using an editing program. In this case, it's Komodo, or Komodo Edit. Komodo is available for free for both Mac and Windows. I'm also using a browser. In this case, I'm using Safari. So I use Komodo Edit to create my web page, and then I use the browser in order to view the web page. As I showed you before, I created my website by first creating a folder. I placed images in that folder. It's not necessary to do that at the beginning. You can put in the images whenever you want. I then opened my editor. I saved the new page, and I saved it as .html. So that is really all you need to do to make a web page. We also talked about HTML basics. Remember I told you that HTML tags have angled brackets at the beginning and the ending of each tag. That tags have a beginning and an ending tag, and that an ending tag begins with a slash. Some commands do not have an ending tag. Notice the image does not have an ending tag. I would not type /img. Notice that the program doesn't recognize that because the image command, or the img command, does not have an ending. Why doesn't it have an ending? Well, you have a beginning and an ending tag in order to affect things between the two tags. Well, an image just appears in one place on the page. There's nothing in between the image. Therefore, it does not need an ending tag. You only need an ending tag when something between the beginning and the ending is affected by the tag. So commands like br or img for image, these do not require ending tags. Let me type in some text. Here is some text. And then I'll put something else inside angled brackets. Now, it should be an HTML tag, but if I just put nonsense in there, something that doesn't make any sense to the browser, it will simply be ignored. So when we take a look at the page now, you'll see that here is some text has appeared. However, the word nonsense has not appeared on the page. Here is some text appeared next to the image. However, the word nonsense did not appear. Now, if I take away the angled brackets, then the word nonsense will appear. So anything inside angled brackets, whether it's a real HTML command or not, will not appear as text on the page. But everything outside of angled brackets will appear as text. Now, what happens if you don't complete the angled brackets? For example, what happens if I have a beginning bracket but not an ending bracket? Well, what will happen is that that text will simply not appear, because the computer will believe that everything from the beginning is part of a command. You did not end the tag. Therefore, it thinks all of this is a tag. However, if you have an ending angled bracket and not a beginning, then it will simply appear as text on the page. Because there's no beginning angled bracket, it is not recognized as an HTML tag. So let's get rid of that. Now, I also noted that you have beginning and ending tags. We talked about that. And that's all that we've talked about up until this point. So now I'm going to return to the presentation and I'm going to explain a few more points about HTML and making web pages. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the beginning of making our web page. The first thing I'd like to talk about is what's called the DTD, or the Document Type Definition, also called the Doc Type Declaration. Now, this identifies the web page as an HTML file. It has no ending tag. It only appears at the very beginning of the document. It used to be very complex, but in HTML version 5, which is what we're going to be studying, it has been simplified quite a bit. And it looks just like this. It's in angled brackets. It begins with an exclamation point, then the word doctype, and then HTML. This should be included at the beginning of every web page in the HTML markup language. Another thing that begins a web page is the HTML tag. This surrounds and defines the whole page. It has a beginning and ending command. Between the beginning and the ending tag is the entire web page. The HTML5 HTML tag usually carries a language declaration. This will tell the browser what language the web page is in. In this case, we might be making a page in English, so we would say HTML language equals English. It's very simple. So let's try out these two things that we've just learned. Now I'm going to make a new page called page2.html. I'm going to save it in my Ponta folder alongside the index page so that we can begin a new web page. And here we go. So as I said, you want to begin with those first two commands or tags that I talked about, the doctype and the HTML tag. The doctype begins with an exclamation point and then the word doctype. I will then type HTML to identify the page as an HTML file. This tells the computer this is a web page. The next thing I'm going to type is the HTML command. Notice that I can add a language tag. In this case, I'm going to declare that it is in English. I then have my ending tag in HTML, and that is my basic web page. Now actually this is a complete web page. It's blank, it doesn't have anything in it, but it is a complete web page. Now as I said before, in previous versions of HTML, this is much more complex. Let me see if I can give you an example of that. So in previous versions of HTML, this is what it looked like. The doctype is here. These first two lines, these are the doctype, or the document type declaration, and you can notice that it's got a lot of stuff in there. It's a lot more complex than what we've just learned. The next line that you'll see is the HTML beginning tag. You'll notice that at the beginning it says HTML, and at the end it declares the language as English, but it also has a lot of extra stuff in there. One of the nice things about HTML5 is that it gets rid of a lot of that junk. So in HTML5 we have something that looks like this. So again, the first two lines are the doctype that just says HTML, and the HTML beginning tag, which declares the language as English. That's a lot simpler to type and a lot easier to remember. Okay, now let's take a look at the next part. In HTML Basics, we also learn that web pages have two basic parts, a head and a body. The head contains information that describes the web page, like the title. The body contains the main part of the web page, mainly the content. Let's focus on the head first. Now, the head tag can include information describing the web page. We talked about that before. The title is one of the things that describes the web page. This will appear in the browser's title bar or in a tab in the browser. But the title is not the only thing that can go in the head. For example, another thing that you can put in the head is something called a meta tag. The meta tag gives various data about the page. For example, who's the author, description of the page, search engine keywords, refresh times, that kind of thing. You can also have other tags like style, for example, that will define CSS styles. There is a script tag, which allows you to add JavaScripts. There's various tags that you can use in the head. But the ones that we're going to learn, at least right here at the beginning, are the title and the meta. A little bit later, we'll get into the style tag. All right, so now we've learned that there are two parts of a web page, the head and the body. I'm going to begin by creating a head. Now, as you recall, on page 2, we already started with the doc type and with the HTML tags. So now I'm going to create the head tag. There we go. And inside the head tag, I'm going to put the title. And I will make the title another Ponta page. There we go. Now, another tag that we can create is the meta tag. Now, the meta tag has several different purposes. You can talk about keywords, the author, the description, but you should have the name of the meta tag. What kind of meta tag will it be? For example, I'm going to make this one the author. So that means that I am announcing that I am the author of this web page. So under content, I'm going to put Luis Poza. So I have just declared that I am the author of this web page. Notice that there is no end to the meta tag. It does not affect any text or any content inside the beginning and the ending. There's nothing to change. It's simply making a declaration. Therefore, it does not have an ending tag. Now I can create another meta tag. Again, I'll have this be a name. I'll make this one keywords. And this one, I'll add content. And now these are going to be keywords that I would like a search engine, such as Google, to identify this page with. So I might want to say Ponta, dog, and Shiba. And so those are my keywords for this page. Another thing that I can do, I can add another meta tag. I can add several meta tags, and each one will have a different function. This one will be a description. And again, I'll have some content, and I'll say about my dog. It should actually be a longer description, but this is just an example. So these are some meta tags that go inside the head. Once again, as I explained before, the head has information which describes the web page, and that's exactly what we've done here. We have the title, which describes the web page, and we have the meta tags, which give the author, keywords, and description for the page. All of these things describe the web page. They will not appear on the web page itself, except for the title, which will appear at the top of the window. So now let's talk about the body. Now the body tag defines the main part of the web page. That's the part which will contain all of the content, the images, the text, whatever else I put in the web page. That will be in the body tag, between the beginning and the ending tag. Now, attributes for the body affect all the content in the page. But let's wait a moment, because I think you need to learn a new word. Attributes. What is an attribute? Well, you've actually seen them before. I've actually used them a couple of times, but you probably didn't know that they were called attributes. All right, so what is an attribute? An attribute is extra information for a tag. For example, the body tag just says body. But what if I would like to add more information for it? What if I would like to add a background color for the body? Well, then I would use an attribute. An attribute only appears in the beginning tag. It does not appear in any ending tag. You can have multiple attributes in a single tag, and they can be in any order. It never matters if you have one attribute first and another attribute second. They both will work, or all three or all five of them will work in whatever order you want to put them in. Now, an attribute begins with a space, then it has the attribute itself, and then a value in quotes. So it'll appear like this. You'll have the tag, then a space, the attribute, equal sign, and then in quotes you'll have the value. So in a moment I'll show you what that's about. Now, attributes for the body tag include BG color, which sets the background color for the web page, background, which sets a background image for the page, text, which sets a basic color for all the text that appears in the page, link, which sets a basic color for links that appear on the page, and vlink, that's a basic color for visited links. Now, you might be familiar with the fact that when you visit a web page, the links are usually blue. But when you click on a link and then you return to that page, the link turns purple. Blue is the color for links, and purple is usually the color for a visited link. However, you can change these colors using these attributes for the body tag. So, let's try out what we've just learned. We just finished typing the head, so now let's create the body. Inside these two tags, the beginning body tag and the ending body tag, we have the content for the web page. As I said, you can add attributes to the beginning command. So, after the beginning tag, I will create a background color attribute. Remember, an attribute begins with a space. Then you type the attribute itself, in this case, BG color, an equal sign, and then you type the value. The value is what the background color will be. In this case, let's try light blue. There we go. So now I'm going to save this page. I'm going to take the file and I'm going to drop it in my browser. And now you can see that we have a light blue background. I can, of course, change the background color. I can change it from light blue to pink. I save it, and now I reload the page, and now you can see it's pink. There are different ways to assign colors. There are about 150 or so different colors that you can just type like this as a word. But you can also create a color by beginning with a sharp sign and then adding 6 digits. These digits are hexadecimal. They begin from 0 and go all the way up to the letter F. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. F is the brightest. 0 is the darkest. So for example, if I want to make a red background, I would type FF. The first 2 digits are for the color red. 0, 0, the next 2 digits are for the color green. And 0, 0, those 2 digits are for the color blue. So by typing sharp FF 0000, I've just said that I want a red background. So if I save it and go to the browser and reload, now you can see my background is red. Now, we're not going to really learn this until later on, but just for your information, the first 2 numbers are for red. The next 2 are for green. So if I make it 00FF00 and save it, you can see that we have a green background. If I then change that so that the FF appears at the end, these last 2 digits are for the color blue. So if I save it and reload, you'll see that now I have the color blue. If you put all colors the same number, for example, let's say BB, 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 all the colors together will actually make anything between black and white, in this case, a light gray color, just like that. Let's make it slightly more interesting, and let's make it a light blue, by making these last two digits a little bit brighter, and now you'll see that we have a light blue. A little bit purplish, but you get the idea. Okay, so that's how you can make a background color. But remember, I mentioned that you can have more than one attribute, and it doesn't matter what order they're in. Now, before I do this, let me actually just create some text on the page. Here is some text. I'm going to save that, reload, and then I'm going to increase the text size a little bit so you can see the text a little bit easier. There you go. So now you can see here is some text. So I'm going to go back, and now I'm going to add another attribute after BG color. This one will be text. Text, I will say, will equal, let's say, green. So this will make all of the text on the page turn green. I'll save it, reload, and now you'll see that this text has turned green. Now let me add a link. I'm going to do a few things you may not understand. Don't worry about it. I'm going to add a break, which is a line break, and then I'm going to add a link. I'm going to say please, and then I'm going to add a link. It's going to very quickly do some things. Let's just say HTTP. Well, let's go to the index, index.html, and go to the main page. Whoops. And then I'm going to finish the link. There we go. Now I'm going to put a space here so those words don't go together. I'm going to take the period and I'm going to put it outside the link. But what I've just done is I've created a link. Now notice the link is purple because that is a link that we have visited before. If I click on it, you'll see that it's the original page with my dog Ponta. And if we go back, then we'll see that this is the page that we've just been making. Now, if I make the link to a page that we have never visited before, I'm going to call this index 2, you'll notice that the link turns blue. That's because we've never visited a page called index 2 in this folder before, so it's not a visited link. Let me go back to the body command, and I'm going to add another attribute, and this other attribute is going to be called link. The link will be, let's say, red. Okay, so now I've made it so that all the text on the page is green and any link will be red. So now when I save it, go back and reload, you'll notice that the link turns red. That's because I've added the link attribute. Now I can also add a visited link attribute. And the visited link, let's say, is white. Now, as you recall, if we visited the page index before, that page, that link appeared purple because we visited the index page before. So now it'll appear white because I just changed the v-link, or the visited link color, to white. So if it's a page that we've never visited before, like index 2, it'll be red, but if we have visited the page before, such as the index page, then the color will be white. Now there is one more, and it's called background. Now you can't have both a BG color and a background image. So I'm going to replace the BG color with background. Now the background image must refer to an actual image file. If you recall, I put several background images in my folder here. Let's see, I have one which is, for example, paper. It looks like this. Just looks like a piece of paper, kind of messy, light brown. And the name of that file is paper1.jpg. So now I'm going to go in, and where I say body background, I'm going to put the name of that file, paper1.jpg. I have to spell it correctly. If I don't spell it correctly, then it will not appear correctly. So now I go back, I reload the page, and now you can see that the background image is indeed that image that I just referred to. Let's try a background image which is a little bit easier to see. This one is called screen. Let me change it here. This one is called screen.jpg. And now let's reload, and now you can see I've got a different background image. So we have the body command, and it has 5 attributes that we've tried so far. These attributes in the body command will affect everything on the web page. We tried a BG color, we tried a background, we changed the color of the text, the color of links, and the color of visited links. Now you might ask, what happens if you put both a background and a BG color? Well, the answer is the background will appear and the BG color will not appear. In reality, both are there, but the background image will always appear above the background color. So it will appear as if only the background image appears on the page. Next, we're going to take a look at block elements, in particular, the heading element. A block element is a unit, separate from other elements before or after it. Block elements begin on a new line. After a block element, another new line begins. Now, what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about using a tag. If a tag is a block element, that means that it's going to begin on a new line, and after you finish the tag, after you end the tag, another new line will begin after it. Headings are a good example of this. Headings are used as titles and subtitles. Search engines often give this text extra importance. They range from heading 1 to heading 6 with matching end tags. Heading 1 is the largest, heading 6 is the smallest. These are block elements. So let's take a look at how this block element will appear on a web page. Now this is the same web page that we had before, except I added some text. You'll notice that the text is not separated by line breaks or anything else. I have put some enters in between these, but none of those appear on the actual web page. When we take a look at the actual web page, this all appears as one block of text. So, after the text, here is some text, and before the link, I'm going to put a title or a heading. So, in my HTML file, I've got here is some text, and I've got the link right here. Between those two, I'm going to put a heading. I'm going to make the biggest one the H1 tag. And I'm going to call this the Ponte page. This might act as a title for this whole page. Now notice it appears below, here is some text, and above, please go to the main page, and that's a link right there. Notice that I've used the H1 tag, and that I've ended it as an H1. Now, because this is a block element, it means that it will not only appear between these two parts of text, but it will actually create a new line, and then after it finishes, it will also create a new line. So, when we take a look at this page, I'm putting the heading right here, in between these two text snippets. Now, as I said before, it will break the line into two parts and it will put the title in between the two. So if I reload the page, I have to save it first. If I reload the page, there's the title. This is the H1 tag. Now notice I did not use any break or paragraph commands. All that I did between here is some text and the word please, all I did was use the H1 command. Because this is a block element, that means that it interrupted this line of text. Now, it might be confusing because it's actually on different lines, but if I put this all on the same line, it's going to have the exact same effect. So now notice that I have here is some text, H1, the Ponte page, please, and then the link. I put it all on one line in the HTML file. It makes no difference on the page. I just reloaded it, and it's exactly the same. In other words, the H1 tag acts as a block element in that it interrupts the text, it creates a new line at the beginning, and it creates a new line at the ending. That's what we call a block element. Now I'm going to try another heading tag. This time it's going to be an H2 tag, and I'm going to put it between the link and the next bit of text, and I'm going to call this more stuff. So the words more stuff appear between the H2 beginning and end tags. Again, we're going to see the page broken up. Notice that the H2 text is smaller than the H1 text. As you go from H1 to H2 to H3 all the way down to H6, these titles get smaller. So you could consider this, the H1, to be the main title, H2 to be a subtitle, H3 could be another subtitle, so forth and so on. So I'm going to put an H3 over here. And you'll notice that that's even smaller. And I'm just going to jump to H6 right here. And actually, you'll probably notice that this is not much bigger, or maybe even might be smaller than the text just around. It's actually smaller than the normal text. But that's the H6 tag. Notice that again, it created a new line. It made a new line after it. These are all block elements. So that is a block element, and that is the heading tag. Okay. Let's learn more about spacing in an HTML document. We're going to begin with the paragraph tag, or the P tag. The P tag describes a paragraph. The paragraph is a block element. After a P tag, there is extra vertical spacing. On web pages, something called block style is used, which means that paragraphs are separated by a little bit of space between them. This makes the different paragraphs visible. Paragraph tags can have align attributes. Now there is another way to go to a new line. It's called the BR, or line break tag. Now the BR tag makes text go to a new line. However, it does not create extra vertical space, and it is not a block element. Now remember, a block element creates a new line at the beginning and another new line after the ending tag. However, the BR does not have an ending tag. Therefore, it only creates one new line, or I should say, a break in a line. Therefore, it is not actually a full block element. Let's take a look at this. I've taken the same web page that we had before. However, I've erased all of the text in the body. We're going to create new text, and then we're going to try out the different commands that we just learned. I'm going to create some text. Here is some text. Then I'm going to say, here is some more text. I'm going to save this, and we're going to take a look in the browser, and there we go. Let me make it bigger so you can see it better. Notice that this all appears on one line in the browser. Let's go back into the HTML text. I'm going to now separate these two lines in HTML. I'm going to hit the Enter key twice. I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to reload the page in the browser. Here we go, I'm reloading. You'll notice that nothing happened. When you hit the Enter key and make extra spaces in HTML, it does not make corresponding spaces in the actual web page. That's an important thing to remember. This is what we call a white space character. White space characters are characters or keys that you type on the keyboard which do not actually create text. They're just blank spaces. So when you hit the space bar or the tab key or the enter key, these are all blank or white space characters. Now, these white space characters, if you type them in an HTML document, they will not appear on the actual web page, with only one exception, and that is a single space. For example, if I put an extra space in between the letters HE and RE, that will appear on the web page. However, if I add more spaces, more than one space, between the HE and the RE, then I save it, and then I reload, it does not make a difference on the web page. In other words, of all the white space characters, which include spaces, tabs, and the enter key, the only thing that will appear on the actual web page in a browser is a single space. More than one space will not appear. Only the single space will appear. So how do I separate these two into two different lines in the actual web page? Well, one thing that I can do is I can use the BR tag. The BR tag, as you recall, is not a block element, but it does break text into different lines. It's BR for break or line break. So if I type BR and then I refresh the web page, you'll notice that now these two pieces of text are on different lines. I'm going to take away the BR and I'm going to add a little bit more text. I'm going to say this is a third line of text in my code. So now I have 3 lines of text, but notice because I've only used enters and tabs, or white space characters, these will appear all as one line of text in a browser. It wraps so that it appears to be 2 lines, but it's actually just one line of text. Now, I'm going to use the paragraph tag in this middle line of text. I'm going to take the P command, and I'm going to end the P command afterwards. Now remember, this is a block element, meaning that it will create a new line at the beginning, and it will create a new line at the ending, which means that these 3 lines of text will actually appear as 3 lines in the web page. You'll notice also that there is extra vertical spacing between these lines. That's what the paragraph tag does in HTML. Now I can duplicate that appearance by creating 2 BR commands. A BR instead of the beginning paragraph tag, and a BR instead of the ending paragraph tag. This will also break the text up into 3 lines, but it will not create extra vertical space. These 3 lines will now squish together, like that. So if you would like paragraphs to appear with spacing between them, you should use the P tag, or the paragraph tag. However, if you would just like to cut to a new line without any extra space between the lines, you should use the BR tag. Also remember that when you're typing HTML, using spaces, tabs, or the enter key will not appear on the actual web page, except for a single space in a row. Most text styling on web pages today is done using CSS. However, a few commands are still used in HTML sometimes. The first one is for bold text. There are 2 commands, the B and the strong commands. The strong command is used when you want to emphasize text as being more important. Similarly, if you use the I and EM commands to make italic text, the EM command will also mark the text as being more important. However, visually, B and strong look exactly the same, just as I and EM also look exactly the same. Either one is usable. However, most people use strong and EM to mark bold and italic text. Let's give this a try. I've created a third page very similar to the others. In this third page, I've created 2 lines of text. Here is some text which is bold, and here is some text which is italic. If we take a look at the web page, before we apply bold and italic lettering, this is what it looks like. Now let's go back into the HTML, and let's create bold and italic text. Let me start here so that the words some text which is bold will be in bold. I'm going to use the strong command, the strong tag, and that's going to end. Let's see, right here. Cut that out and put it at the end. So I have the beginning and the ending tags for strong. That means that this text here, some text which is bold, will appear as bold text. I'm going to save that, and now when we reload this page, you can see that text becomes bold. Similarly, I can do the same thing to here using the EM tag. Let's end it after the exclamation point. And now when I save it and we come back over here, you can see that some which is italic is now in italic style. As I've said, this can be done in CSS. However, because of their ability to express emphasis of certain text, strong and EM are still commonly used. Another point is called entities. Entities can be kind of interesting. Entities is when you want to put a special character in your web page, but it might not be possible to type it directly. Or, if you do type it directly, it might not come out correctly when people view it, especially in various browsers. Now actually any character can be entered as an entity. In order to make an entity, you have to input a special code. Entities begin with an ampersand and end with a semicolon. For example, ampersand yen semicolon will create the yen sign. Many entities have an English language representation like this. However, entities can also be expressed as code numbers. For example, ampersand sharp 0165 semicolon will also produce the yen sign. To demonstrate this, I've created another web page, and this time I've left it blank. So let's try creating some special characters using entities. If I just type "this is text," then I save it, and then we view it, you can see that it says simply, "this is text." But after "this is text," let me create an entity. I'm going to say ampersand, yen, and a semicolon. This will create the yen sign. And there we go. The yen sign can also be created by using a number or numerical entity. I could put the ampersand. You always must put the sharp sign, and then I'm going to put 0165, and then a semicolon. This should create another yen sign. And when I reload, there's another yen sign. Now, as I said before, you can put virtually any character on a web page using entities. For example, if I use the number 0071, that will equal the capital letter G. So if I go back to the web page and reload, there's my capital letter G. Of course, I could just type the letter G. However, with some unusual characters, using an entity is often a much better way of doing things. For example, you might not know how to make a paragraph sign. If I do an ampersand, sharp, 0182, and then a semicolon, and then I save it, you can see that we have a paragraph sign. Now let's try for something even more interesting. There's a sign that I've seen made very often in Japan. It's not used very commonly in English. This would be ampersand sharp 8251 and then a semicolon. If I save that and then we go take a look, we can see something called a reference sign. Let's try another one. Let me go on to the next line so it's a little bit easier to see in this HTML document. And this time I'm going to make an ampersand sharp 9731. This should be fun. If we go back to the web page and we reload, we have a snowman. But it doesn't stop there. Let's try another one. Let's try ampersand sharp 9832. This one should create a hot spring sign. And there we go. Let's keep on going. There are some which you might actually recognize from another environment. Let's try a longer one. Ampersand sharp 128540. That's a rather long number. Let's see what we get when we reload. Look at that. You might recognize this from your cell phone. That's correct. The emoji or emoticons that you use in your cell phones are actually entities. These are universally recognized and can be reproduced in browser windows. Here's one that makes a little picture of a PC. Ampersand sharp 128187. Let's reload this one, and there's our little picture of a PC. Let's try one more. This will be of a Japanese theme. That's an ampersand sharp 127884 and then a semicolon. And now when we go back, we should see Japanese holiday flags. Now in reality, there are quite a few of these. I have a page that I can give you the URL for. It is La Remi Fa So, kind of a cute name there, la.remifa.so/unicode/unicode.php. This gives a very exhaustive list of pretty much all the different kinds of symbols that you can find. Let's go for miscellaneous symbols or dingbats, and you can see this is where I'm getting the codes from. So you'll see the character represented, and right here you can see the code that I was using in the example web page, and you can see that there is a very large number of symbols here. Let's go to another one. Here's even more. You might recognize some of these again from your cell phone. And the list just goes on and on and on. There are literally tens of thousands of different symbols that you can use here. And this is one way of getting some rather unusual characters and even pictures in your web page using entities. The next thing I'd like to show you is the block quote tab. As the name implies, the block quote is a block element, and it creates a 0.5 or half-inch indent at both the left and the right margins. As I mentioned, it's a block element, as the word block quote suggests. Now, the block quote tag is additive, meaning you can repeat the block quote tab. You can say block quote, block quote, block quote for greater indents. Each time you add another block quote tag, you add another half-inch to the left and the right indents. Block quotes are commonly used to cite quotations from a source. You've probably seen websites where a quoted piece of text is indented by about a half-inch. Sometimes it's surrounded by special boxes or other styling. That's something that you can do in CSS. but the basic block quote tag will simply indent the text. Let's return to the page that we had before. I've reset the text so that the middle line is a paragraph. As you can see, this is what it looks like in the actual web page. Because this middle line uses the paragraph tag, or the P tag, there is space above and space below this line. However, if I change the P tag into the block quote tab, and then end the block quote tag, you'll see a slightly different effect. It will have the same spacing as before, but it will be indented by ½ inch. That is the effect of the block quote tag. As I said before, if you repeat the block quote tag, you can add another ½ inch indent. Notice that each repeated tag has both the beginning and ending angled brackets. Now, in this case, I've actually done something unusual. I have two beginning block quote tags, but after this line, I only have one ending block quote tag. Now, since I only ended one block quote, that means that this following line will actually be indented by ½ inch. This line will be indented by a full inch because it has two block quotes. But since I ended one of those, this next line will retain or keep a ½ inch indent. So I'm going to save that and reload the page. And once again, when I reload, you'll notice that this line moves out another ½ inch, and this line also moves out another ½ inch. There we go. So if you recall, I have a block quote and a block quote, and then I end one of the block quotes, so this text moves back by ½ inch. If I came back and I ended the block quote again, let me put this on a new line so it's easier to see. So here you can see I begin two block quotes, and then I end two block quotes. You'll notice that this third line will jump back to the beginning because it no longer retains a block quote. Notice that there is no extra spacing for the second block quote. The spacing above and below this middle line is the same whether or not I have one or two or any number of block quote tabs. Another block element is what's called the horizontal rule, or the HR tag. The HR tag creates a horizontal line across a page, filling the available space. The HR tag is a block element, and it has no end tag because it does not surround any other content. The HR tag can use attributes including width, align, color, and size. However, most of these attributes are no longer used because they have been replaced with CSS styling. That's something we'll learn later, so right now, let's try using those original width, align, color, and size attributes. To demonstrate the HR tag, I have changed the page again. I now have two lines of text, but they do not have any block element or break in between them. So on the actual web page, you can see that it appears as one line of text. If I go back into my HTML, and between these two, I add the HR tag, you'll see that they are broken up. The HR tag will actually create two breaks. You'll see the line in between the two, but you'll notice that there is a break here above the line and a break here below the line. Therefore, it is a block element. By going back into the HTML, I can add attributes. Once again, these attributes have been replaced by CSS styling, but we haven't learned those yet. So, let's create some CSS styling here. So, let's create some attributes. Let's begin with width. Now the width attribute is measured in pixels. I can make this, for example, let's say 300 pixels. If I save this and go back to my page and reload, you'll notice that now the line does not go all the way across the page. You'll notice that there is some space over here and some space over here. This is 300 pixels on the page. If I change that number, let's say to 200, save it, and then reload, you'll notice that now the line is smaller. There are some other attributes that I can add. For example, we might change the size attribute. The size attribute will make the line thicker. Let's make this 10 pixels. If I go back to the web page and reload, you'll notice that now the line is much thicker. It is, however, not filled in with any color. So let me go back and let me add another attribute. After size, let me say color equals red. I'll save that, go back to my page, and now you'll notice that the color of the line is indeed red. Another thing that I can do is that I can change the alignment. You'll notice that this line is actually centered. That's the automatic or the default setting for this tag. However, I can add align equals left. I can save that, and now it will be aligned along the left side. Keep in mind that not all browsers will display this the same. Internet Explorer is best known for being different from the other browsers. I can change these attributes. For example, one thing I can do is I can change the width from a number in pixels to a number in percent. Right now it's 200 pixels. You'll notice that when I make the page or the window for the page bigger or smaller, the line does not grow or shrink. That's because it is an absolute value. It is 200 pixels. And no matter what the size of the window is, 200 pixels is always the same. However, if I change that to 50%, that means that the horizontal rule will only take up 50% of the available window space. Now, because it's already about half the window space here, it won't seem to change very much. I've just reloaded. You'll notice it got a little bit smaller. But now, when I make the page bigger or smaller, notice the line also gets bigger or smaller, because it is only taking up 50% of the available space. Another thing that I can do is I can change the color. Let's change this to blue. I can change the size. Let's change this to 5. And I can change the alignment. I can change it, for example, to be right aligned. There we go. So that is the HR tag. Again, it's a block element. I can use several attributes, but once more, when we learn CSS, we'll use the CSS instead of the old HTML attributes. Next, let's take a look at lists. There are two kinds of lists. Ordered lists with the OL tag have numbering, 1, 2, 3, ABC, etc. And then unordered lists, marked by the UL tag, have bullets. Each item in a list is within the list item, or LI tags. Lists are block elements. Let's take a look at what that might appear like on a page. Here I've made a list of 5 different cities in Japan. As you can see, I've not included any paragraph, break, or any other block elements, so when we look at them on the page, they appear as one line of text. Now I'm going to make them into a list. I do that by beginning with either an OL or a UL tag. I'm going to use the OL tag. Then for each item in the list, I have to create an LI tag, both a beginning and an ending tag. Now in order to make this easier, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to just copy and paste the beginning and ending tags. There we go. But you see that after I'm finished, each item in the list has an LI beginning and ending tag. The OL beginning and ending tags appear at the beginning and the ending of the list. Now when I save it and I reload the page, you'll notice that we have a list. Because it's an ordered list, an OL, the list is shown with a number order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice in the HTML, I did not have to actually type the numbers. If I were to type a number, for example 1 for Tokyo, then that number would simply be repeated and it would look strange. So you don't want to do that. Notice that I can change the order of the items in the list. Right now, for example, Fukuoka is number 5. However, if I go into the HTML and take Fukuoka and put it in the number 3 position, like that, I do not have to change anything else. Automatically, Fukuoka moves up the list and is now number 3. If I want to change this into an unordered list, all I have to do is change the OL tags into UL tags. And now, because it is unordered, it does not have a number order and instead is simply represented by bullets. If you want to change the type of bullets, or in an ordered list, have letters instead of numbers, you have to use CSS styling. We will learn more about that later. Finally, we're going to learn about how to make links or file references. We've already done this before with the background image in the body tag, but now we're going to learn more about it. In HTML, files such as images are not contained inside the web page file. They must be referred or linked to. There are two types of links: relative links and absolute links. Referred files are commonly used in the link, or the A, standing for anchor tag, the image, or IMG tag, and for background images. Now let's talk about relative references, or relative links. Remember I mentioned before there's two types of links, relative and absolute. What's the difference between these two? Well, a relative link is made to files which are within the same folder or website. That is to say, if I want to link between two pages that I've created in the same folder, I would use a relative link. Relative links are usually very simple. If the file is in the same folder, all you have to do is type the name of the file and make sure that you remember to include the file name extension. Now, if the file is in a folder which is inside the folder where your web page is, then you would need to begin with the folder name, then a slash to indicate that it's a folder, and then the name of the file. However, if the file you want to link to is outside the folder that you are currently making your web page in, you would have to add two dots, then a slash, and then the name of the file. Don't worry about this. Simply use the name of the file name by itself with the file name extension, and make sure that all your photos or linked files are in the same folder as the web page that you're making. If you want to get fancy later on and create extra folders, then you can use the other file name conventions. Now, absolute references are different. Remember, a relative reference or a relative link is a link to a file which is in the same folder or website. However, an absolute reference is made to files on the web which are in a different domain. So this is what an absolute reference would look like. You probably recognize it. It looks like a URL or a web page address, and that's exactly what it is. This is an absolute reference. Notice that the very end, or the last two parts, are the same as a relative link or a relative reference. If it's an absolute reference, you would add http:// and then the name of the domain and whatever other folders are necessary. So now let's review how to make these links or references. Let's begin with a link. A link, or a hyperlink, takes a visitor to a new page. The anchor tag, or the A tag, is used with the href attribute. So your full command would be the A command, the A tag, followed by href equals, then in quotes the value would be the link to another page. Then you'd have the link text followed by the end command, or the end tag, for the link. Therefore, the link text, or the text that appears between the beginning and ending tag for the link, will appear blue and underlined unless you've chosen another style for the link. It is possible to use an extra attribute, target equals _blank, and that will open a link in a new tab or window automatically. Another kind of reference is an image. Images are placed using the img, or image tag, using the src attribute. Now this is different from a link. In a link you use href to indicate the address of the page you want to link to. However, in the image tag you use src. There is no end tag. Images are not block elements. An image tag would look like this: img and then src equals, and then the location of the image that you want to appear in your document. There are attributes that you can use with the image tag. These include width, height, alt, border, align, hspace, and vspace. Width will control how wide the image appears. Height, how tall the image appears. Alt is a tag which allows for alternate text to be used. This will appear if the image is somehow broken, or if a person is trying to read the web page with some sort of speech application. The border attribute will create a border around the image. The align attribute will align the image to the left or the right of the page. And then hspace and vspace will create extra space horizontally to the left and the right, or vertically to the top and the bottom. All except the first three are now replaced with CSS styles. So width, height, and alt are still used. However, border, align, hspace, and vspace are no longer used in HTML, but instead have been replaced with CSS. As you can see, once again, I have cleared the body of the web page that we're working on, so it appears blank. Let's create a link. I'm going to say, please visit my home page. This is going to be a relative link, or a relative reference. Now, the first thing you have to decide is what text will become a link. For example, you might want to make the entire text into a link. However, most people don't do this. You might want to make only the verb, the action word, into a link. Or you might want to make the destination into a link, or the verb and the destination. Really, it's up to you to decide which words will be the link. I'm going to create a link around the destination. So I'm going to create the A tag, and then at the end I'm going to create a /A. There we go. Now, this is called the anchor tag, and it's actually used for more than just links, but we're just going to use links in this case. Now, I have to say which page I want to link to, so I have to use the href attribute, href, that stands for Hypertext Reference. So I'm going to give the name of the web page we're going to go to. That's going to be index.html. And now I'm finished. That's my link. So if I save this and go to the page and reload, you'll see now I have my link. If I click on the link text, then we will visit that page. Now I'm going to create an image. In order to separate it from the link, I'm going to create a couple of BRs. Now normally I would not do this, but this is just something quick and dirty so that I can show you an image which is separated from the link. Now, I used the Ponte Fuji before, but I'd like to use a different picture. I also have Ponte Shrine. This is a picture of my dog at a Shinto shrine. So the name of that one is ponteshrine.jpg. So I'm going to first make sure it's in the same folder as the page that I'm working on. Then I'm going to go into my web page and I'm going to create the image tag. Now, the image tag requires a source, src. That's the same really as href, except for a link we use href, for an image we use src. And then I'm going to put the file name of the image I want, ponteshrine.jpg. Now, just for fun, I'm going to actually misspell the name of this image. I'm going to do that to show you what happens if you don't do it correctly. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to reload, and you'll notice that a question mark, a broken image tag will appear. So I have to make sure that I spell the name of my file correctly. Then when I reload, there's the image of my dog at the Shinto shrine. Now you'll notice that it's a little bit big. Well, I probably don't want it to be actually that big. So how do I change that? Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to find out exactly how big that image is. The dimensions of the image are 800 by 570 pixels. So when I'm in my HTML, I want to change the height and the width. So I'm going to change the width of the image, and I'm going to make it 400 pixels wide. Now, if you'll recall, the image was 800 pixels wide, so I'm making it only half as wide. Now that means I should change the height to be also only half of what it was originally. If I recall correctly, the height was 570 pixels, and half of that would be, if my math is not incorrect, 285 pixels. So now if I save that, and I go back to the page and I reload, now you'll see that the image has been resized, something which is a little bit more manageable for this page. Now, if you make a mistake in the width and the height, let's say, for example, that I make the height only 185 pixels, then you'll notice that the image does not look quite as good. My dog looks a lot shorter. That's because we've distorted the width and height of the page. Now, there is a kind of a shortcut that you can use, and that shortcut is to only change one dimension. If I change only the width, then every browser that I've tried, at least, I think every browser, will automatically resize the other dimension so that the picture is in proportion. So, in fact, when you're making a web page, you don't have to change the width and the height when you are resizing the image. However, it is considered the best form to do this. So I should change it to 285. Now this can sometimes be a little bit difficult when you're changing the size of the file by something other than just exactly half. If, for example, I wanted to make it 40%, I would probably have to get out a calculator and calculate what 40% of 570 pixels is. So that does make it a little bit difficult, but it is something that is considered better form when you're making a fully formed web page. So that is a hyperlink, and that is an image. Notice that the image has no ending tag. And that's the end of our initial lesson on HTML. If you recall, we have studied many different parts of a web page. We have learned the structure. We have learned what a web page is. We have learned about the HTML head and body tags. Inside the head, we've learned about the title and meta tags. Inside the body, we've learned about several different tags, including many block elements. For example, the headings, or H1 through H6 tags, the paragraph, or P tag, the BR, or line break tag, the block quote tag, the HR, or horizontal rule tag. We've learned how to make lists, both ordered and unordered, and we've learned how to make links and how to place images on a web page. With these basic commands, you should be able to make many different forms of web pages, but there's still a lot more left to go. Okay, previously in this video, I created a web page so that you could see how a website is built. However, that was at the beginning before I explained everything, so you probably didn't understand what was happening. Then I gave a presentation, and one part at a time I explained the different steps in creating a website, and then I gave you a demonstration for each one. So now hopefully you understand a lot better how a website is made. So the next step is to create a website where you follow along with me. So I would like you to make sure that you have all the software, that you have the files that you need, and as you watch this video, go along with me and create the web page that I'm creating on your computer. So the first thing you should do is just check to make sure that you have the correct software. Now you should have at least two types of software. The first is a browser, and I'm pretty sure you already have one of those. I'm using Safari. But you should also get a web page editor, and I strongly recommend using Comodo Edit. That's what I'm going to use for this demonstration. You can find Comodo Edit for free at a website called ActiveState.com. There you can find the Comodo Edit software. Go to www.activestate.com/Comodo-edit. When you get to that page, you should see the download page for Comodo Edit. It's free software. It can be used with your Macintosh or Windows machine. There's also a Linux version available. So please download the software and install it on your computer. And after you're finished with that, please return to this video. Alright, now that you've installed the correct software, we can begin by creating a new folder. I have over here on the right side of my screen all of the steps we're going to take to create our website. So the first step will be to create a folder. We're going to add some images. Then we're going to open our editor and save the page. So I'm going to go to my desktop, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to create a new folder. Now you can name this folder whatever you want, but I'm going to call mine Practice. There are rules for how you can name files and folders in a website. We'll learn those later, so right now just anything should be fine. I've also added two images. These are available on the website in the same place where you can see this video. So just right-click on the links or otherwise download these images and put them on your computer. The first one is called Paper One. It's a background image. And the next is called Ponteleaf. It's a picture of my dog. So we're going to select both of these images and we're going to put them into the Practice folder. So now if you open up the Practice folder, you should see the two images. All right. The next step is to open up our editor. I'm using Comodo Edit, and I'm going to create a new document. Now, one thing I should point out is that when you download Comodo Edit for the first time and you open up a new document, it will automatically be a text file. It's okay to leave it like that. You can change it to an HTML file when you first save the document. However, if you would like your software to always open up with an HTML file, then you can go into the Preferences. If you go into the Preferences under New Files over here on the left-hand side, you can specify what kind of language will be used for creating new files. So you can choose HTML or HTML5. That's the one that I've chosen. Then when you click OK, when you open up a new file, it will automatically be given a title with the HTML file name extension. Like I said, that's not necessary because when you save the file, you can change the extension then. Let's do that step right now. So let's do a Control or Command S, and now make sure we go to the desktop, go to our practice folder. Now we're going to change the file name. Make sure that, of course, you have the .html file name extension, but make the name of the file index.html. This is the name given to the main page or the top page in any website or directory. It should be all lowercase. Once you've made sure the title is correct and that you are in the correct folder, go ahead and click Save. Now you've saved it, and if you take a look inside your directory, you should see, along with the two images, you've got the index file. The index file should have a browser icon because you have given it the .html extension. Alright, so now we've saved the page, we can now begin to actually type the HTML for the document. That's going to begin with the doc type declaration, the HTML tag, the head, and then the body. So let's go along and do those. Now, inside Komodo Edit, we can see that we have a tab open and it says index.html. You'll notice that if you start typing anything, I'll type just a few letter A's, that a little star appears next to the file name extension. That little star means that you've made changes that haven't been saved yet. When you save the file, then that little star disappears. So at the beginning of our HTML document, we're going to begin with a document type declaration. That is going to begin with an angled bracket. And notice that we get a little drop-down menu. Whenever you start typing something, especially a command, in Komodo Edit, it gives you a list of all the possible things that you can type at that time. The more you type, the more it narrows down the number of possible things that it can fill in for you. So I'm going to type an exclamation point, and now that means we are looking at either a comment, which has a double dash, or a doc type. Now, when you've selected the thing that you want and you hit the Enter key, it automatically fills that in. Now, you don't need to do that. You can, if you want, go back and type it in by hand. There is no rule that says that you have to do it one way or the other. But in this demonstration, I'm going to be using the autofill most of the time because it is a very convenient tool. Okay, the doc type is HTML, so we're going to fill that in, hit the angled bracket, and now we've created our first tag. Now you'll notice that this did not turn blue. Probably the reason for that is because this is a tag that begins with an exclamation point, and that's usually extra information, so the program is kind of ignoring it to a certain extent. Now, we're going to hit Enter, and notice that I've got already a tab here. Now, this is something that Komodo Edit automatically does whenever you've created a beginning tag. After a beginning tag, it will indent, because that's normally how things are expressed in a web page. Whenever you have tags or text inside of a beginning and ending tag, it indents to show that you're inside this other tag. However, the doc type tag does not have an ending tag, so we're going to hit the backspace and go back to the left margin. Don't worry so much about the spacing, about the tabs here. That's something that we're going to get into later in the semester. And it's also not something that's necessary for the web page to work. It is instead something that simply makes the HTML code much easier for other people to read. Okay, So now we're going to do the HTML tag. So we're hitting the left angled bracket, we're typing HT, and now you can see that HTML is automatically selected in the autofill. I'm going to hit enter, and now we have the HTML tag, except we need to put in the ending angled bracket. Now, in Komodo Edit, when you do this, it automatically gives you the end tag as well. If you hit enter at this point, it will put the ending tag 2 lines below, and it will create an automatic tab that will allow you to put in the next tab. Now, notice that we have the beginning and ending HTML tags. That means that the next tag I'm going to write is going to be inside of that. That's why we have the indent. Every time you have a beginning and ending tag with something inside of it, you should have an indent. So we're going to put in the head. Now again, at this point, if you haven't done this on your computer, you should pause the video, type in the doc type and the HTML, and then come back to the video and then again start with us. So now I'm going to put in the head tag. Again, the autofill works very nicely. I can hit enter, and now I've got the head, put in the ending angled bracket, hit enter, and now I'm inside the head. Once again, you might want to do this and then come back to the video. The next thing I'm going to do is put in the title. Let's see, there we go. Hit the end tag, enter, and now we're in the title. Now I'm going to put in the title of Ponta's page, and now we're off to a start. Okay, so what else am I going to put in the head in addition to the title? Well, I'd like to put in a meta tag. If you recall, a meta tag is a tag which allows you to add information that describes the web page. So let's start out and type in meta. Now, until now, we haven't used any attributes. HTML, head, and title usually don't use any attributes, but the meta tag does. And the first attribute we're going to have is the name attribute. The name attribute tells us what kind of meta description we're going to be using. So if I hit space and then start typing name, you'll notice that name is highlighted in the list of possible attributes down below. I hit enter, and now we've got the name attribute. Now we're going to add the value. Remember, the value is what that attribute, what information that attribute is going to add. So under name, we're going to put author. So this will describe who is creating this web page. Now, in order to say what who the author is, we've got to use the content attribute. So either type or autofill in content, and then type your name. So I'm typing in Luis Poza. That's my name. Now, here's an interesting point. Notice that when you put in the ending angled bracket, it does not give you the ending tag for meta. That's because meta does not have an ending tag. It doesn't surround anything else. So Komodo Edit understands that you don't need an ending tag for meta. All right, so now we've finished the head. And one thing that you might notice in Komodo Edit is that on the left-hand side, next to the numbers, you'll see these little lines and boxes. And the boxes that we see right now have little minuses inside of them. Notice that these minuses appear next to tags which have a beginning and ending. These actually show you the connection between the beginning and the ending tag, and it allows you to collapse them. For example, let's say that I don't want to see what's inside the title. So I can go to the title, the little minus sign next to the title on line 4, click it, and now the title has collapsed. If I do the same thing on line 3 next to head, the head collapses. Now to show this again, I just click on the plus and click on the plus again, and we can see our code again. Don't worry if this confuses you. It's not necessary to know, but it is one way to make some of the code disappear so that you can see other parts of the web page more clearly. Okay, so again, at this time, if you have not already made the head, title, and meta tags, please pause the video, go and do that, and then come back. Since we've now finished the head, we're going to go in and create the body. So after the end of the head, hit enter, and now we're going to create the body. There we go. Again, end the tag, we get the ending tag, hit enter, and now we're inside the body. I would like to make a little bit of text. This is some text so that we can see something in the body of the web page when we take a look at it in a browser. So let's go ahead and let's save this. Again, you can see that there's a star or an asterisk next to the file name. If you do a save, that can be a Control or Command S, or you can just click on this icon in the toolbar. Now we've saved the file, and now we can go visit it in a browser. Okay, so now to view it in a browser, you either double-click the index file, or you can just drop it into a browser window. That's what I'm going to do. And so here is our page. You'll notice that we've got the title, Pontus page, in the tab, and we have this is some text up at the top left. So it's still a very boring page so far, but we're going to fix that very soon. All right, so at this point in time, I'd like to add some attributes to the body tag. Remember, an attribute comes after the tag and before the ending angled bracket. You type in a space, and now you can start typing in the tag. Now, Komodo Edit does not give you all of the possible tags that you can possibly, it does not give you all of the possible attributes that you can possibly make, because some of them have been deprecated. By deprecated, I mean that they are no longer commonly used. Now, this is because CSS has replaced many of these tags. Don't worry, we're going to get into the CSS later. Just for right now, I want you to practice attributes, so don't worry if they don't appear in your autofill list. The first one we're going to use is to set the background image. So I'm going to type in background. Notice that it's not becoming visible in this list because it's not one of the ones that's available right now. So I'm going to type in background and then equals. Okay, so that's the attribute for creating a background image in your web page. Now, we do have also an attribute for a background color. It's called BG color. But for this practice, we're going to be using a background image. All right, so which image are we going to be using? Well, if we take a look in our folder, remember we put in two images. One of them is a background image. It's called paper1.jpg. Now, here's another important point. Is the file name extension visible on your computer? It might not be. You might just see paper1 and nothing else. Now, if that's the case, you can still do this, but it's much more convenient if you're able to see the file name extensions, because then you'll know exactly the correct name to give the file in HTML. You have to use the file name extensions in HTML. Now, if you haven't done this already, again, you can go to the page where this video, where you found this video, and on that page will be a link to a web page that shows you how to turn your file name extensions to visible. If you want to do that, please pause the video and go and do that right now. Otherwise, we're going to continue, and we're going to put paper1.jpg as the background image for this web page. So, inside the quotes here, I'm going to put paper1.jpg. That should give us a background image of this paper. So let's go ahead, save that, go to the browser, and when we reload the page, now you can see the background image. Now, if the background image did not appear, then you should go back to your HTML and make sure you did everything properly. For example, did you put in quotes around the file name? Did you add the file name extension? Is everything, including the file name and the extension, spelled correctly? If you did not spell it correctly, for example, if you forgot the number 1, then the background image will not appear. Everything has to be spelled correctly and formatted correctly in order for it to appear in the website. Okay, so once again, go ahead and try this. Make sure you've done it correctly, and once you've finished, come back to the video. The next thing we're going to do is create an attribute to give the text a certain color. So I'm going to type in text equals, and then we're going to add a color. Now I could say, for example, dark brown. Now why did I choose dark brown? Why not, for example, pink or orange or white or green? Well, that's because in the web page I'm making, I'm using a background that's kind of a light brown color. So I would like to have the same basic color scheme. I'd like to have all my colors on this page be related to each other, and dark brown might be a good color for that. So I'm saying text equals dark brown. I'm going to save it. I'm going to view the web page, and now when I reload, you can see that I've got a color which, according to the browser, is dark brown. I don't really like this very much. It's kind of a slightly dark red color, so I'm going to actually try to make this a little bit more detailed by using a special hexadecimal color code. Now this is something I showed you before. It must begin with a sharp sign and then with 6 what we call hexadecimal characters. Now in this code, the first 2 represent the color red. The next 2 represent the color green, and the final 2 represent the color blue. So you've got to get used to how these colors are mixed in order to make any other color. 0 means they're all down to the darkest possible setting. So 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 is black. As you go higher in numbers, 5, 5, or 9, 9, they get brighter. Now this is what we call hexadecimal. That means there's 16 values. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. So F is the highest setting. So if I try this color, it's going to be a bright red. So in order to make a dark brown, I've got to have probably a medium setting to red, let's say 6, 6, a lower setting for green, that'll make a darker orange, and no setting for blue, so probably 663300 is a good dark brown color. I saved it. I'm going to go to my page. I'm going to reload, and sure enough, that could be a little bit more red, but I think that works just fine. That's a dark brown color. Okay. Now, you don't need to use this color that I've just chosen, but if you want, you can try this, and you might even want to pause the video and try out lots of different color values. Just play around and see what colors you can create. If you make some mistakes, if things don't work, then don't worry. We're going to come back to this later in the semester. Okay, now we're going to create a link color. So I'm going to put a space, say link equals, and we're just going to say red for the links. So our links will be red, and then for vlink, we're going to say orange. So anytime we have a link which has been visited, that will be orange in color. So we've created now 4 different attributes to the body tag: background, text, link, and visited link. So those 4 attributes will now affect everything that appears on the web page. All right, so now, again, if you haven't finished this, go back to your own editor, make these changes, and then come back to this video. But at this point in the video, we're going to go on and we're going to create various HTML commands in the text, starting with heading, then going on to paragraph, line break, bold, italic, entities, block quote, the horizontal rule, list, link, and image. So the first thing is to make a heading. So I'm going to get rid of this some text thing here, and I'm going to create instead a title. So this is going to be using the H1. Let's see, we have H1 right there. I can just type it in. It's a very short tag. And then end it, hit enter, and now I'm ready to put my title here. So I'm going to put in Ponta's page. Now this is different from the title that we wrote in the head. This title, Ponta's page, will appear in the browser title bar and or the tab. But down here, this will appear on the actual page. So if we save this and take a look at it in the browser, you'll notice that we have a nice big title up there at the top. Okay, so now we've got our header. We might add another header later on, but that's what we're going to do for right now. The next thing we're going to practice with is a paragraph. So that means we're going to create some text. I'm going to begin by just typing the text. And I'm going to just do something that's very easy. It's a little cheat. Let's just say, here is some text, period, space. Don't forget the space at the end. Then select all of that text. I'm doing it by hitting Shift left arrow. So now I've selected all of the text plus the period and the space. Then I'm going to copy. You can do this by right-clicking and saying copy. Or you can just do a Control or Command C on your keyboard. Then, on your keyboard, type Control or Command V, as in very or victory. So hold down the Command or Control key, keep it down, and then type VVVVV, and you'll notice that it creates a lot of here is some text, here is some text, here is some text, just like that. If I save it, and then I take a look at it on my page, then you'll see that I've got a lot of text here. So that's one way to create some placeholder text fairly easily. Okay, now I'd like to create another paragraph's worth of text. So I'm going to just select all of that I selected, copy it, then I'm going to click at the end, hit enter a few times, then I'm going to paste again. And now I've got this. I should probably bring it back a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now I've got two paragraphs of text. But as you recall, hitting the Enter key does not make any changes in the actual website. So if I actually look at this on my browser and reload, you'll notice it appears as just one paragraph. So at the beginning of the first set of text, let's put in a paragraph tag and end it. Now you'll notice that an ending tag appears. You can either just delete that or you can cut it and then go to the end of your paragraph, and then you can either paste it or you can just start typing left-angled bracket / and you'll notice that Komodo Edit automatically says, oh, the last HTML tag that you typed was P, you probably want to end the P. So it allows you to autofill the rest of the end tag, just like that. You should do the same thing with the next paragraph as well. So let's do a P, get rid of that other one, start typing in the end tag in the correct place, and now we've got the beginning and end tags for P or paragraph in both cases. So now I'm going to save this, and now when we view it on the page, you'll notice that we have two separate paragraphs. They're separated by a space between them. So there's how to use paragraphs with text. Okay, next we're going to do a line break. Now, a line break is very similar to a paragraph, except it's not a block element. And unlike a paragraph, which creates an extra space between two parts of text, the line break only makes the text go to the next line, and there is no extra space separating that. So let's take this paragraph block, and let's put in a break right here. Now, I don't have to go to a new line in my editing. I could just put the break right here like that. Notice again, there's no end tag for break. To make it look a little bit more clean, however, I might want to put that on a new line just so I can see it a little bit better. Notice that it is inside the P tag, so I should probably have an extra tab here. Now, when I save this, we'll be able to see the last part of the second paragraph jump to the next line, but it will not be separated by any space, so it will appear to be in the same paragraph. Let's reload, and there it is. Now the text has moved down to here. So it is a new line, but in the structure of the web page, it's not counted as a new paragraph. So you can use the paragraph and BR commands or tags however you like in order to make the text appear in the way that you want it to. The next thing I'd like to do is to put in bold and italic text. So let me put in some special text that will be bold and italic. So let me go somewhere in the first paragraph and I'll add a line. This is bold text. Actually, it's not a line, it's just a sentence. Now, in order to make it bold, I'll put in the strong tag at the beginning, and then I'll move the ending tag to the end of that sentence. So that one part should have bold text. If we go back to this paragraph and we take a look, reload, we can see the bold text right here. We can also see that I have misspelled the word bold. This is blod text. So let me see if I can fix that. It should be bold text. There we go. Again, you might want to pause the video and do this on your own page. In the meantime, let's go to someplace in the second paragraph and do the same thing with an EM tag. This time, just to be a little bit more clean, I'm going to create the EM tag first, and then inside the EM tag I'm going to create the italic sentence. So this sentence is italic. There we go. Again, I'm going to save it. I'm going to take a look at that paragraph, and sure enough, here we have the italic sentence. So that's how you do bold and italic text. Make sure that you do that on your own. Make sure that it shows up in the way that you want it to. Now, one note about HTML, and that is tags should be nested. They should be within other tags, and there should be no mixing. Let me give you an example. Let's say I would like this bold text to be both bold and italic. So I would put an EM tag right here. But where do I put the end tag? Now, I could put it here after the end of the strong tag, but that is considered bad style. These tags should be nested. That is to say that one tag, beginning and ending, should be inside the beginning and ending of another tag. So technically, the EM ending should be there. So the strong tag is on both sides, and the EM tag is within the strong tag. So if I save that and I take a look at the text, reload, now we have bold and italic text right there. Now it'll work in both situations. I could put the ending EM tag before or after the ending strong tag. However, in well-formed HTML, you should have tags within other tags. They should be nested. Therefore, this is a correct positioning for that ending EM tag. All right. The next thing I'd like to put in is an entity. Let's go with one of the more normal ones that we had before, and that is the yen sign. So let me, after the end of this paragraph, put in another paragraph. And inside that paragraph, I'm going to say that a can of soda costs 100 yen. Now you'll notice that I did not put the yen sign in, so I'm going to go back and put it in right here. Now on the Macintosh, I can actually type directly a yen sign. On the Macintosh, that's using the Option and Y keys. You can do something similar in Windows, although it's a little bit more difficult. You could, for example, go into Microsoft Word, insert a symbol, make a yen sign, and then copy and paste it into the page. And probably that will show up in the browser correctly, but sometimes it won't. As you can see here, it didn't work. So to be safe, even if it's something that might normally work, it's probably better whenever you have an unusual character to use an entity. So ampersand, yen, and then semicolon. Notice I do not put a space here between here and the 100 number because I don't want a space between those two. It's not necessary. Just go directly from the semicolon to the number. Now I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to reload, and there I can see my yen sign. As I noted before, I can, instead of using the YEN, I can use a sharp followed by a code. In this case, the code is 0165. And then I can see, if I reload, it is exactly the same. It's a yen sign. Now, there are other things that you can do. For example, I can say call a free dial number, 0120. I'm just going to say 123456. Now, actually, interestingly enough, there is an entity for the Japanese free dial sign, and that is the ampersand sharp 10175, and then a semicolon. So I'm going to save that, and if we take a look at how it shows up on the page, you can see that we get the little sign there. Now, the yen sign is one where I can just type in the word yen and it'll work. There are at least several dozen, if not a few hundred entities which have language-based entity codes. However, many of the codes do not have that, and you need to know that code number instead. I've put up a link on the video page to show you how to find all of those entities. All right, so there we have entities. Just as a note, by the way, this is bothering me as a matter of style. It looks like I should have a space in between here, so I would go back in here and after the semicolon and before the number, put a space. Then when I save it and check it again, that looks a little bit better. All right, so now we've done entities. Let's go on to the block quote. So let me add a little bit of space here. Whoops, excuse me. And let's put something in block quote. Let's say, for example, let's begin with a paragraph, by the way. There we go. And inside the paragraph, I want to put a quote by a famous person. Let's see, who should we do? Let's try Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein once said, and then we want to have, whoops, that should be Albert, excuse me. And then we should have a new line, and we should have the block quote command or tag. And inside the block quote, we can have whatever it is that he said. We can put in quotations, or we can put in an EM tag, or we can do both. But it's all within the block quote. So let me just have the block quote only first. Einstein once said that, I believe the quote was, let's see, religion without science is blind. Science without religion, put in a space here, is lame. We got a little bit of whoops, there we go. There we go. So there is our quote. And after the block quote, I will add a little bit more. He was saying that science and religion are both essential. All right, so you can see that I have the beginning, the introduction to the quote before the block quote tag. I have the analysis afterwards, and in between I have the actual block quote text. Now when we take a look at this on the page, we'll see that we get that. Here's the beginning sentence, the post sentence, and then here is the block quote right there. You'll notice that when I select it, it does not select that first ½ inch. That's a margin. So please do the same thing on your page. You can use any quote or any text that you want. You don't have to do the same thing that I did here. All right, next we're going to make a horizontal rule. Let's say that I want to have that between this information about the can of soda and about Albert Einstein. They certainly do seem like they should be separated. So I'm going to go back, and between the paragraphs for a can of soda and Albert Einstein's quote, I'm just going to put an HR. And note again, there is no ending tag. So I'm going to save it, go back here, and sure enough, there we have that line. Now again, we will learn how to do this with CSS, but for the moment, we can put in attributes such as width equals, let's make it 80%. And by the way, you can make it either a percent or a number in pixels. Let's make the size, let's just make it 3 pixels tall. Now we could do alignment, left or right, and we could do color, but I'm just going to leave it at that. Going to save it, and now if we take a look at that page, reload, now we've got it a little bit thicker, and we've got it 80% of the width of the page. So there is our line, our horizontal rule. All right, now let's make up a list. And what I'd like to do is, since the Einstein quote is standing out as separate from pretty much anything else, let's actually just do a little cheat here. I'm going to select the horizontal rule. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to put it, or put another one, paste it down below the Einstein quote. So now we've got actually separation there as well. So now let's make a list. What kind of list can we make? Let's just make a list of my favorite movies. So I'm going to begin with a paragraph, and inside that paragraph I'm going to say, here is a list of my favorite movies. All right, now, since I want this to be an unordered list, I'm going to use the UL tag right there, and I'm going to begin with a list item. Notice that because I'm inside the unordered list, Komodo automatically suggests that I'm going to have a list item. It doesn't give me any other options because it knows that this is really the only thing I'm going to use inside of a list. So I'm going to do that, close it, and now I've got that list item. Now, again, I'm going to do a little cheat because I know that I'm going to make 5 or 6 list items, but I don't want to have to type and separate these time and time again, so I'm just going to copy that blank list item. I'm going to copy it with a Command C, and then I'm going to paste it 5 or 6 times. This is a little bit of a cheat, but there's no rule against it. It's perfectly fine to do. I just call it a cheat because it means that I'm taking a little bit of a shortcut. It doesn't mean that there's anything actually wrong with it. So let's come up with some of my favorite movies. Let's say The Seven Samurai is one of my all-time favorites. Let's say also, well, it's been a long time, but let's put Star Wars up there just for the heck of it. Let's say Pleasantville. If you haven't seen that one, that would be a really good one to see. A really funky and actually not too great comedy, but I happen to like it, is called Blast from the Past. You might want to check that out. Let's see, The Sixth Sense is one of my favorites. Sixth Sense, you might be getting an idea of what kind of movies I like here. Let's say another one is going to be Life of Brian. That is a bit of an acquired taste and somewhat political, I suppose, but still, those are some of my favorite movies. So after the end of that UL, I'm going to say you should try to watch any of these movies. There you go. And now we're going to go over to the page. We're going to see what it looks like, and there it is. Now, as I showed you before, it should be easy to switch this between an ordered and an unordered list. I'm going to put in an OL there, change this to an OL. Now it's ordered. If I save it and then reload, you can see now I've got the numbers there. Later on, we'll learn how to change that to a list not with numbers, but with letters or Roman numerals or even hiragana, katakana, iroha, hoheto. All kinds of different things are possible, but they need CSS. I'm actually going to change this back to an unordered list. I like that better. Okay, so again, make sure that you've done this or something similar on your own page. All right, if you've come back to the video, now we're finished with the list. Now all we need to do is put in a link and put in an image. So I'm going to go with another horizontal rule. I'm going to copy that again, and I'm going to paste it again, because I'd like another separator on my page. And then I'm going to make a new paragraph. And in this paragraph, I'm going to write, please visit, my dog's blog. All right, so my dog's blog is another web page. It's an absolute link. So I'm going to use the A command, and I'm going to type in href, as you see right there. I've got that automated. And now I'm going to type in the HTTP URL, because it's an absolute reference, and it's going to be www.shiba.me. That's actually my dog's blog. So we're going to put in the end of the A command right there. And you'll notice, by the way, that I decided to make the words my dog's blog into the link. Not visit or not the whole sentence, just my dog's blog. You can decide whatever text you want is that link. So now that I've got that in there, I'm going to reload the page, and here it is. Remember, we made links red. I might want to go back and change that to another color at some point, but that's the color that I chose. And now if I click on that link, you can see that it is going to my dog's blog page. Here we go. So there I am with my dog on New Year's Eve. We're visiting a little shrine, and there is my wife holding the dog, and so forth and so on. So if you want to ever visit my dog's blog, it's right there at shiba.me. Okay, so let me go back to this page. Notice that now that I've visited that page, you notice that it's now orange. Again, after I can see how this color looks against that background, I might want to decide to change those colors. But for right now, let's just leave it like that. Okay, let's see. So once again, there is the hyperlink, shiba.me. But one thing you may have noticed is that when I clicked on the link, it went to that page, but it stayed in the same window. It did not create a new window. Let me just see if I can show you here. Here's the tab up at the top, right there, and if I click on the link, it replaces the web page I've been making with the site that was linked to. It does not open in a new window or a new tab. Now, how do you do that? If I wanted to make this link open up in a new tab or a new window, well, there's a way to do it. You can add an attribute. It's called target, and it's not included in the recommended attributes in Komodo's list, but nevertheless, it will work. The value for target is _ blank. This should work in pretty much any browser. Target equals quote underscore blank. Now the underscore is not necessarily needed. There's a version that is without the underscore, but that's the standard one that's used. So now if I do that, and if I save it, and I reload the page, what will happen is that when I click this link, you'll see that this page stays open and a new tab will open up. So I'm going to click on it, and sure enough, you can see here is the original page, and here is the new tab that opened up with the link. So if you'd like people to open up a link in a new tab or a new page, you should use this target equals quote underscore blank attribute. Now there are other ways to do that. I'm pretty sure it's a JavaScript thing that you can do. But for right now, this is the one that you should probably remember. Target equals underscore blank. Okay, so one more thing we're going to add, and that's an image. We're going to do this inside the paragraph that we just created, and we're going to use the IMG, tag. We need for this the source attribute, and here we're going to put in the relative reference, not an absolute, but a relative reference, because the picture we're going to use is not there. It's right here in the same folder that we've been using. This is a practice folder, and it's called ponteleaf.jpg. That's the name of the image that I gave you. So we're going to put it right here, ponteleaf.jpg. And then I'm going to end that. Again, there's no ending tag for the image tag. So I'm going to save that. We're going to reload, and there is the picture of my dog. Now, you'll notice a few things. You'll notice, for example, that it's on the same line as this text right here, please visit my dog's blog. You'll notice that if you select that text, the selection goes all the way up to the top of the image. Well, what if I don't want that? What if I want it on the next line, for example? Well, that would be easy enough. All I need to do is put between those two a break. Now that will put it on the next line. So that's one way of doing it. But what if I would like the text to wrap around that image? Well, I can do that. In here, I can say align equals left. Now again, this is something which has been replaced using CSS. It's not recommended by Komodo, but nevertheless, it's something that you can do. I believe it's pretty much still universally recognized by pretty much every browser. So if we put in align equals left, what happens is that the picture goes to the left and the text, the text wraps around it. And sure enough, that's what happened here. We have the picture and the text is wrapping around to the right. Now, if that image is too big, we can make it smaller. Now, I should find out the original size of that image, and it appears that it is 500 by 360 pixels. So, I'm going to make it half that size. I'm going to change the height to 250 pixels. Now, really, all I need to do is just that. I can save it, and I can take a look at it, and boom, not only does the height change to 250, but the width changes as well. And I've just realized, actually, I didn't want the height to be 250, I wanted the width to be 250. So let's change the width to 250 and make it smaller still. There we go. Now, what should the height be? Well, the height was 360. So if the width is half, then the height should also be half, so it should be 180. Now, remember I told you, if one dimension changes, the other will change automatically. So when I reload this, it should not make any difference. And sure enough, it did not make any difference. So you don't really need to put the width and the height in there. It might actually be more difficult to do that, because in some cases you might have to get out a calculator and figure it out. However, it is considered good form in HTML to change both the width and the height, or even if you don't change it at all, still to put in the correct width and the correct height of the image. Again, it's considered well-formed HTML. Another thing we might want is a border. This image is actually kind of mixing in a little bit too closely to the background color, so I'm going to put a border around it. So let's put in another attribute. After height, let's put in border equals, and if I put in just one, then we'll have a 1 pixel border. Now what color will it be? It should be the same color as the main text, and sure enough, it's a dark brown. If our text color was black, it would be black. Now, Internet Explorer treats it a little bit differently, but most browsers will have the border color be the same as the regular text color. Now, what if I want the border to be bigger? No problem. I'll just put in a bigger border. Let's say 3, save it, and check it out. And there's a 3 pixel border. Now what about this over here? Notice that the text is right up against the picture. That doesn't look very good. So let's actually change that. Now this is something that is actually much better done in CSS, but it is possible to do it in HTML. This is called HSpace. Again, it's not recommended because CSS is better, but if you say HSpace equals, for example, 5, that means that 5 pixels of extra blank space will be added to the left and the right, horizontal left and right of the image. You cannot do it just to the left or the right in plain HTML. So let's take a look. Let's reload. And I think I may have forgotten to save it. Nope, I saved it. And oh, actually, no, it actually did kick in. It was very hard to see, but now you can see that there's 5 pixels of extra space between the text and the edge of the picture. But you'll notice that there is also 5 extra pixels over here. To make it a little bit more visible, let's make the HSpace 50. And here you'll see a big difference when I hit reload. There we go. Notice that there's much more space over here and here. Now this is why the CSS is better. In the CSS, you can put in the extra space on one side only. But in HTML, you cannot control that. In HTML, you can only do HSpace, and that will put in extra space on the left and the right. So let's get it back to 5 pixels, and it looks a little bit better. There we go. All right. Now, what else can we do here? We can do vertical space, VSpace, which adds space to the top and the bottom, but we don't really need that right now. There is one that actually most people don't think about, but we should put in anyway. It's called Alt. And Alt is an attribute which is not deprecated. It's not replaced by CSS, and it is something that you should have. It's considered a good universal design attribute, and it's something which helps people with disabilities. It will help a person who is blind to hear spoken to them what the picture contains. So I have to write a description of what is in the picture. So this is a photograph of my dog Punta. So that's going to be the alt text. So if I reload, you probably won't notice any difference. However, it's very common for some browsers to have a pop-up or a tooltip, a little window that opens up, which shows that text. It does not here, however. Not all browsers work in the same way. Some browsers, when you have a broken image, will have the text appear instead, and that's what happens in this browser. What I did was that I changed the name of the image so it was incorrect, so the image would not show up. And if the image does not show up, the alt text will appear in that box instead. If I fix that so that it is correctly spelled, puntaleaf.jpg, and then if I go back to the web page, now the picture returns. All right. So these are many of the attributes that can be added to an image tag, and that is pretty much the end of this first demonstration lesson. So you should have a page which looks roughly like this. Just to make it a little bit more interesting, let me add a whole bunch of extra text next to the image so you can see how the text wraps around it. So notice that I've got the image here after please visit my dog's blog, but I'm going to put this extra text after the image, like that. So now we've got please visit my dog's blog, then the image, then this other text. So what's going to happen when we take a look at it here? Well, you'll notice that the other text just followed immediately after the words my dog's blog. Why did that happen? Well, because the image is aligned to the left. As you recall, we said align equals left. That basically means that the image is now taken out of the context of the text, and it's simply on the left side of the page. And the text, both here before it and here after it, is going to wrap around that image until it reaches the bottom. And so you can see we've gone only about a third of the way. So I'm going to add a lot more text. Let me add a full paragraph after that, right here. Excuse me. And then another one here. And now we should see the text wrap completely around the image. And after it gets around the right-hand side, you'll notice that it just wraps around and comes around down below it as well. And there we go. Okay, so your page should look like this when you're finished with it. If there's anything that you did not get correctly, please go back and look at that part of the video and check it out. But in the meantime, this is the end of this basic HTML lesson. So at the beginning, you may not have known anything about HTML, but now you should know how to make a basic web page with various kinds of text, a little bit of styling, various block elements, including block quotes and horizontal rules, in addition to lists, links, and images. So that's quite a bit, but we're going to build on top of that quite a bit in this semester. So please practice all of these points before you go on. It is very, very important that you be comfortable writing HTML before you continue and learn more advanced coding and techniques. Thank you, and I'll see you again soon.